Hi, this is Rosalind with Rosalind's Health at Home, and I am so glad you are here with me today. If this is your first time on my channel, I just want to say welcome. If you could just do me a favor, be sure to like this video and be sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave. Today, I have 5 homeschool tips and curriculum advice for kids with developmental language disorder. And this video is in collaboration with Living with Eve. And there are going to be a handful of us moms of children that have special needs or that need some special direction in their homeschooling to help them succeed. And that is what this collaboration is all about. Now, I have 2 children that have developmental language disorder, or also known as MERLD, which is mixed expressive receptive language disorder. And this is a disorder where children, they just don't understand language. Every language to them is sort of like a foreign language. They just really don't understand, and it's really neurological. And it doesn't mean that they have any kind of a disability, because typically children with developmental language disorder or mixed expressive receptive language disorder are incredibly bright. They tend to excel really in the sciences, so math and different sciences. It's just that they really have a difficult time understanding language. And this is a problem because everything is processed through language, you know, with speaking and listening and reading. All of that is probably why math makes so much sense to them, because math is numbers, it's not words. And so like my son, for example, my oldest son, when he was in school, when he was in 1st and 2nd grade, and still attending a brick and mortar school, he did so great in math. His teacher actually told me, she said, you know, he is beyond his peers in math. He's incredibly bright. The problem is that whenever it came to language problem or word problems, he couldn't get it. He got everything else on the page right, but when it came to the story problems, he couldn't get it. And we had to just sit down and draw it out. And even then, still, he had a little bit of difficulty. So children that have language disorders, they are typically very, very bright. It's just that this one area is really a struggle for them. The good news is that there are ways to work around it. They typically begin to understand language in advance. It's not the case every single time. In my case, both of my children are incredibly verbal now. My youngest son literally never stops talking. And so they do go on to become verbal in many cases. I think in most cases, it's just that, you know, there is this especially initial time. And if you can get it when it's early and you can begin doing the things that will help to promote a development in language, in both understanding and expressing themselves with language, then you will have greater success as they get older in school. So here are my 5 tips. My first tip is use as many visuals as possible. Children with developmental language disorder tend to be incredibly visual. They need to have those visuals. And so if you can even attach words to things, or, you know, do pictures. You know, playing memory is actually a really great way. And my kids loved to play memory. And so you have the pictures and they have to match the pictures. And then as they're matching the pictures, you name the items, or other types of games and things, making it fun. Now, I have to say that when you're practicing language, in my case and in many parents' cases that I have, you know, talked to or been in groups with, they also tend to be incredibly stubborn, and they don't like it when they kind of catch on to the fact that you're trying to teach them. They really don't like that. My oldest son would just put the brakes on immediately when he kind of got wind of the fact that, you know, I was doing something that was kind of making him try to practice language or try to learn something. He immediately put the brakes on. Nope, we're not doing that. And so, you know, doing it in ways like fun, game things, you know, in ways that they don't really catch on. But use a lot of visuals in your school. If you can get books, picture books, even chapter books that have pictures in them. Whenever my children read a book report book or a book for school, I always try to find an accompanying video or movie that goes along with it, because then they get that sort of visual aspect. And so using a lot of visuals. Also, use props in school. I have done this so many times, using their Legos, using their stuffed animals, using action figures. I have 2 boys, so we don't have like Barbies or anything like that, dolls and things. But using these types of props, you know, whether it be, you know, to tell the story, to illustrate the story, using, you know, when we were practicing with my younger son, the concepts of in front of, behind, on top, you know, underneath, and these types of things. I always use toys. I used toys, I used flashcards, I used all kinds of props to illustrate. And that was how he really began to learn these types of concepts. So, you know, especially if they are abstract concepts are difficult for really any child, but especially for children with developmental language disorder, because they don't have anything to attach that concept to. And so if you can get a prop or something that can help them attach that concept to something that they can see, that they can touch, that they can hold, it really helps to sort of bring that home to them. So using props. The third piece of advice that I would say is go with their interests. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do this as much with my older son, because he attended a brick and mortar school for 1st and 2nd and half of 3rd grade. But my younger son began in homeschool. And so I actually began at the very start with Thomas the Train. If you have a child with a developmental language disorder, you probably understood exactly what I was talking about. Most parents that I have talked to have said that their child is absolutely crazy obsessed with Thomas the Train. I don't know what it is about Thomas the Train. Both of my children were obsessed with Thomas the Train. My younger son is he's very much attached, even though he's, you know, old enough that he's not really playing with toys as much anymore, but he just has that soft spot for Thomas the Train. And there's something about it. And so there are a lot of material, surprisingly, online that you can get that have Thomas the Train in them, you know, or whatever, you know, if it's like Chuggington for your child, it still trains. Yeah, and my son for a while was really obsessed with PJ Masks, and he still really loves superheroes. And so if you can grab onto that interest, whatever that interest is, it doesn't have to be Thomas. So if you have a child with a language disorder and you're like, my kid doesn't like trains, maybe there's something wrong with my kid. Nope, there's nothing wrong with your kid. Just grab onto whatever that interest is for them, and try to find as many materials with that as you can. Even taking maybe story problems for their math and rewriting it out using, you know, the interest that they have. You know, there have been times that I've actually crossed out things in their story problems and rewrote like names of things above either where I crossed out, just to sort of personalize it and help him to make an attachment to that thing. And so using their interests, studying things about their interests. So, you know, in 1st grade with my younger son, we studied everything about trains, all the parts of the trains. And so we did, you know, unit studies around the things that he was interested in. That almost like the first half of that first year was almost all unit studies for him. And so, you know, grabbing onto those things that they're really super interested in, and then creating, you know, curriculum around it, unit studies around it. There are tons of unit studies out there already written. So if you can find a unit study that correlates with something that they're interested in, go with that. Really, I would say in the lower grades, if you have a child with a language disorder, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, really just focus on trying to build that language, build that vocabulary for them, helping them to understand language, because the other things will come in time. But if you don't have that language aspect under their belt, at least, you know, making consistent improvement in language, then, you know, trying to continue doing, you know, social studies or science and history or, you know, or English language arts, reading all of these things, it's going to be a frustration for the both of you, because all of those things are, linked directly to language. So, my advice is, just really try to build that language using these visuals, using props, going with their interests. And then number 4, practice those WH questions: what, where, when, how, why, and really practice those, asking the questions. I did this a lot with both of my children, where, we would just practice, the questions of, where are you going? And then I would usually get an answer back like, I'm putting my shoes on. That wasn't my question. Where are we going? And then what I would do is I would actually do things like, if I would tell them, where do you brush your teeth? And they would say, I want to go to the park. No, where do you brush your teeth? And so what I would do is I would grab their hand, take them into the bathroom, grab their toothbrush and their toothpaste, and I would act out, where do you brush your teeth? We're brushing our teeth right now. This is called brushing our teeth. So where do you brush your teeth? And so then we would say, we are in the bathroom. We brush our teeth in the bathroom. And then we would go, why do we brush our teeth? And we would talk about it. And I would draw a picture of a tooth with a cavity in it, or show them a picture on Google. Why do we brush our teeth? When do we brush our teeth? So we brush our teeth in the morning, and then we have a little picture of a kid getting up out of bed. We brush our teeth in the morning, and then we brush our teeth before we go to bed at night. And so then practicing these things, and I would take one concept at a time. So I wouldn't try to mix up these WH questions with different scenarios. I would take one scenario and go through all of them. And then when we had really locked down that scenario, we would move on to the next one. And then as they got older and as they began developing language, then I would ask them to give me instructions on how to do something. So, how do we put a DVD into the DVD player? Or how do you make your favorite sandwich? And so then they would have to illustrate back to me. And then I could use those types of scenarios, building those sort of like, building blocks with the language of taking steps and using the WH questions. So, when they would illustrate for me back, like instructions on how to do something, using again those WH questions to ask them for further feedback. So practice those. Number 5, don't forget the recasting. So, as you're building language in your school, as you are reading and then asking, for feedback on what they have read, don't forget the recasting. So if they say something wrong, if you have done any kind of research into the developmental languages, or you may have heard about the recasting. So if they say something wrong, you don't repeat it wrong back to them. Do not repeat the wrong thing back, because you're reinforcing that wrong statement or that error that they made. Instead, you repeat back for them correctly, but don't correct them in doing so. Let's take an illustration. So, if you ask your child, do you want a cup of milk? And they say, yes, you want a cup of milk. I had this happen to me so many times with my kids, where I would ask them, do you want a cup of milk? And instead of saying, yes, I want a cup of milk, they would say, yes, you want a cup of milk. And then I would say, Roby is saying, I want a cup of milk, right? And I would make it a question so that I'm not correcting him. And he would say, yes, Roby wants a cup of milk. Okay, Roby, now you can say, Mama, I want a cup of milk. And so what I did was I repeated it back for him, but I repeated it back correctly. And then I asked him to say it to me correctly. And so what's really important is that when you get these wrong statements, or they use a wrong word, or they use improper syntax, or they use improper grammar, instead of repeating it back to them wrong, instead of saying, Roby, you don't say you want a cup of milk when you're talking to me. You say, I want a cup of milk. Don't do that. Don't correct them that way, because first you're repeating the wrong statement to them. And so that becomes very confusing to them. And it's not really, the part of recasting is building that confidence in them to be able to speak correctly. As your children get into grade school, and especially into second, third, and fourth grade. They already, in most cases, have an idea. They know that there's something about them that's not like their peers. So they're already sort of beginning to feel that sort of insecurity of, my peers are blah, 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 talking a mile a minute, and I'm having a hard time keeping up because I'm processing language slowly, and I can't speak to them as quickly as they speak to me, and I get in the middle of my sentence and I get all muddled and I forget words and I don't remember what I'm trying to say. And so they already know that they aren't on the same level as their peers language-wise. And so that's already a bit of a blow to their confidence. And so when we are helping to build those language building blocks with them, we do it in a way that helps to build their confidence instead of constantly correcting. Don't say it that way, say it this way. It's a destruction of their confidence, and it is confusing at the same time, because now you've said the same thing two different ways. And so they're having a hard time remembering which one was wrong. And so just saying it the right way and then instructing them to say it with you the right way, that helps to build it. And then every single time that they say it the wrong way, recast it back to them the right way and ask them to repeat it back. And, after a few times, a handful of times like that, that's going to lock in for them. And so don't forget recasting. So these are the 5 tips that I have for homeschooling, using visuals, using props, go with their interests, practice those WH questions. Don't forget recasting, do it the right way. And the curriculum advice that I would have for you is for math, we've chosen to use Math-U-See because it uses manipulatives. And now maybe your child doesn't necessarily like Math-U-See. It's very much bare bones on the page. So there aren't pictures. There aren't a lot of story questions, which I really like. And the ones that they have are short, so they don't get into multiple steps. And when they do have multiple steps, so I believe in maybe the end of first grade and a few times in second grade, they have multiple step story questions a couple of times, but they're broken up into different problems. So they're not all in one question. You don't get this long paragraph of a story question that has multiple steps, which I really like. But I mostly like it because of the manipulatives. Also because Mr. Demi is just so brilliant in the way that he explains math. I was always poor in math myself. When I began homeschooling my kids, it was definitely an area that I was feeling very insecure about. And so I watch alongside of my kids, and I'm understanding some concepts of math for the first time ever. And so I love it for that. Maybe your math curriculum, maybe your child won't connect with Math-U-See, but my suggestion would be either choose a math program that uses manipulatives and promotes manipulatives in their material, or find one where you can use the manipulatives without it becoming awkward. I believe manipulatives for children with developmental language disorder are almost a must, because they really need to be able to visualize, see that visual of the numbers in some sort of an object that they can hold, that they can touch, that they can manipulate. And so that would be my suggestion for math. For all other subjects, I would go with something that is very gentle. There isn't a lot of repetitive homework, repetitive, constant having to do tons of busy work, and constantly having to repeatedly write things over again and over again and over again. It's demotivating for them. They need something that is going to challenge them, but in a gentle way. And so I've chosen to go with Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool. It is completely free. It is online. My kids like that part. And it is incredibly gentle. It is also very cyclical. So you learn a concept and you come back around in about 5 or 6 lessons, and you repeat that again, and it is very cyclical like that. And my children really need that sort of cyclical type of curriculum with these language-based subjects. And so I would definitely go with that. Now for language arts, I would try to go with something that, if it does actually include language arts, meaning for English, like for language, if it does include actual language arts, that it's gentle, that it is not heavy worksheet based. I would go with something that's very gentle, that uses all different kinds of learning styles included in the curriculum, or go with a curriculum that is not heavy on language arts, or even that goes into maybe a different direction than actual language arts. And I say that because language is already difficult for them. So trying to grab onto these grammar concepts is incredibly difficult. It's very hard for them. Again, it's that sort of almost abstracting, even though, okay, nouns, verbs, we get those. When we get beyond nouns and verbs, where it's difficult or impossible to really visualize, like say prepositions, and you're getting into all of these different kinds of more complex areas of language arts. It's very, very difficult for them to grab onto that concept because it's too abstract for them. And so Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool does have language arts, but it's incredibly gentle. And she includes online games, videos on YouTube, and different ways for them to grab that, songs, and then of course worksheets, but also worksheets that sometimes include cutting and pasting. And so it's not just fill in the blank or write out a sentence. It's, cut these things and paste them in the correct column. And so there are so many other things going on with that hit all the different types of language styles. And so by the end, they've really latched on to that concept. And so go with something that's gentle, go with something that has all different kinds of media and learning styles included in it for them to be able to really latch on to the concept. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that it helped to give you some direction. I was really excited about this collaboration because especially being able to contribute in the area of developmental language disorder or mixed expressive receptive language disorder, because there is so little out there that information wise and support wise for parents with children that have developmental language disorder, because it's not as widely known. It's not talked about as much. I have several blog posts that I have written for developmental language disorder or MERLD, and a post that has resources for you to find, that give advice, that give direction for parents, and also a support group for parents. And this support group has an accompanying homeschool support group as well. And so I will leave those links in the description box below for you to check all of those things out. If you know a parent that has a child with MERLD or developmental language disorder, or they suspect that their child might have this, I would really welcome you to pass this video on to them, because it will be very helpful for them, I'm sure. Also, don't forget to check out that the collab with all of the different moms chiming in these different areas. You can find the link to that, to the playlist below, as well as check out Living with Eve's YouTube channel. You're definitely going to check her out. She has so many resources. Even if your child does not have the same struggles as her child has, she still has so much to offer for children that just have all different kinds of learning struggles. All of the resources that she has recommended have been so interesting for me. I have actually used some of the advice that she has given, even though my children's struggles are different than her child's struggles. And so you'll definitely want to check out her channel. Also check out the other videos, because again, you might find a resource that really connects with your child, that is very useful and helpful for you in your homeschooling, even though maybe their struggle is not the same as what your child's struggle is. A lot of times those resources and advice kind of overlap with one another. And so you're definitely going to want to check out those links. All of the links are going to be in the description box below. I hope that you have found this video instructional. If you have, just don't forget to leave that like below. Also, don't forget to subscribe there above to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.